The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Stephen Sakach here once again with Tullio, Siragusa, and Maher. If you've ever wondered why your team at work feels more like a reality TV show than a well-oiled machine, well, today's episode is for you. Let's decode the mysteries of team dynamics. Obviously, there's a ton on this topic. We want to give you a playbook to help make sure you've got a highly functional team and not a dysfunctional one where you have to go to tribal council once a year to vote someone off. So let me get started. I want to read something from Google's Project Aristotle. It says, who is on a team matters less than how the team members interact, structure their work, and view their contributions. So who is on a team matters less than how the team members interact, structure their work, and view their contributions. This finding, it kind of underscores the importance of communication, social norms, and psychological safety over individual team member capabilities in determining team success. Here's another quote. None of us is as smart as all of us, no matter how brilliant your mind or strategy. If you're playing a solo game, you'll always lose out to a team. That's by Ken Blanchard, management expert and author of The 1 Minute Manager that we've probably all read once in our life. Ash, you've got some data. Real quick, if not for having a better culture going on at work, give me a couple ROI points for making sure you've got good team dynamics.
Absolutely, Steve. So this is from Editor's Choice. And what they polled was that companies with a fully engaged workforce are capable of generating twice the revenue. So research further suggests that positive communication within the workplace directly correlates with positive communication and socializing outside of work. This adds weight to the benefits of team building exercises and the tangible difference they make to morale. Now, another one that was really interesting from Editor's Choice. More than 60% with a best friend in the workplace are twice as likely to achieve full engagement. And the stats goes a little bit further. It says as many as 63% of women who have a best friend at work will be twice as engaged. Corporate team building statistics also confirm that employee satisfaction increases by up to 50% when surrounded by people with whom they are friendly. By nurturing these relationships, organizations can make significant improvements. Now, last stat, again, another Editor's Choice. Nearly 75% of employees see teamwork and collaboration as essential. While nearly 3/4 of employees deem collaboration to be a vital cog in the workplace engagement, only 18% of employees have their communication skills evaluated at a performance review. Then just over a quarter, 27%, get communication training, which is super, super interesting.
So we aren't really solving the problem a lot of times. And had we solved the problem, we might see twice the business. We might see much more engagement and happiness at work. So there's obviously a lot to play here with this team dynamics, this culture dynamics. I want to get into, let's talk about some of the poor team players, the personas that, maybe you recognize in yourself or you recognize in others. I know one of these I was like, to myself there. So let's go through some of these and kind of see where we land after that. First one here is the persona called the silo builder or the lone wolf. So this person, their traits, they work independently without sharing information, resistant to collaboration. This creates knowledge gaps and inefficiencies, making it difficult for the team to function cohesively. They take pride in being self-reliant, even at the expense of the team. I know I've seen that in teams before where it's just, one person and you don't know what's going on and they're withholding, what's the status on this? And no, I've got it. And it's like, okay, but we need some open communication here. I hope I haven't been that person where I'm just going and pounding and stuff. I like to collaborate, so I'm hoping that's not me either. But I could see some lone wolf in me for sure. You guys have any thoughts on that one?
I think we all have a little bit of that at one point or another. Interestingly enough, I was part of this men's circle for over a decade, and one of the things that the dangers of the lone wolf is that you get into the suck hole and you're there by yourself. And studies have been shown that those who sort of operate this way, also it impacts their ability to earn wealth or even their financial well-being, because the more in relationship you are with the rest of the world, the more your likelihood of being successful, even financially. So it's not only not healthy for those around who don't know what you're doing, but it's not healthy for the individual to be that lone wolf working by themselves. And often it's just a tremendous lack of like emotional intelligence, but there's usually some wounds associated with that, right? Mm-hmm. In my circle work, we often dealt with a lot of toxicity, and it was rooted in some wounds that hadn't been treated or healed. And those men tended to be very much lone wolves because it's just a way to protect themselves, right? In a little hole. So to a certain degree, it's the anti-team success individual, but there's deeper lying causes that if shown some empathy and some love, those individuals can be pulled out of the hole, so to speak, and participate as a pack, because the wolf is more powerful as a pack.
What's interesting about that is we're also sort of pre-wired to work as a team. And there were some studies that show like our neural synchronicity, like they studied children, and if working together on a task, their neural activity was more synchronized together versus when they worked alone, which I thought was like, we seem to be pre-wired to have this need and efficiency and effectiveness when we're working with others. So I thought that was kind of fascinating that it's just like, you're working with others and suddenly we're all, in this groove together. Let's read the next one here. The free rider. So this one, I think if you've worked on a group project at school at one time in your life, there's been one or two or three or four free riders in that group project. So they rely on others to do the work. They contribute minimally. This increases the workload for others and demoralizes those who are contributing fully. And I know my daughter, who's in college now, is going through this same dynamic with the free riders. I'm sure you guys have felt that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of, when you're able to pinpoint who that person is, you don't want to call them out, but I've had that happen. I'll give you an example. When I was at UCI to do my coding bootcamp, I had to assess my team, who was going to do what. So for example, I knew that this one person was very skilled in front end, and that's all she really cared about. So her coding languages were like Angular, which is really clean front end design. I had another gentleman that I assessed that he was really big on back-end databases. But then we had the free riders, right? So the one free rider, I could tell he was a gentleman from UCLA, poli-sci major, and he was as bad at coding as I was. So the way I was able to enroll him to support without becoming a cog in the wheel or holding us back from accomplishing our goals was that, okay, if we're going to allow our two superhumans are great at their coding, for the front end and the back end, have them do their thing without getting in their way, then you and I can work on selling and concluding our presentation when it comes time. Now, he just needed to have that conversation. He didn't want to be a free rider, but I think he was at some point, it was towards the end of the curriculum and he was over it. So I had to enroll him and get him excited, say, hey, I'm not going to put pressure on you, just like the team's not putting pressure on me to spend on a 5-minute coding project. It takes us 12 hours to do. Let the smarter people do that, and let's focus on what we're good at. And that sparked that excitement to say, okay, I'm not really free riding, but if we just let it go, he totally just would have rode the wave with us and contribute a little bit to the overall success. So it was cool able to pinpoint that and then enroll him into
and then
cause.
Ash, did you crush it?
We did. Absolutely crushed it. Yeah, absolutely. And it was an amazing thing because what I found that the challenge, again, this is people who don't understand team dynamics. I had to have the awareness of where my strengths were and have the awareness of where my team's strengths were. Whereas everyone else was just trying to code and show off their coding skills. Well, there's coding levels, right? So the other teams, unfortunately, I got to see it firsthand where they weren't practicing team dynamics. They were lone wolf as well as free riders, right? So the lone wolves are trying to show off their skills. The free riders are riding the lone wolves, their clout, right? So it's like when you saw that happen and you saw how those teams performed and everyone kind of got in the way of each other, and then you saw how we were super smooth, it was a lesson in leadership at that point, a lesson in team dynamics right then and there. Mind you, I didn't reflect on that at the time. I didn't realize that our team dynamics is what brought us all together. It was more okay, this is something I learned from Gary Vaynerchuk, and let's practice those principles. Now I can look back and be like, wow, no, we practiced true team dynamics, and that's why we won 4 out of the 7 awards that night.
No one actually is born a free rider or freeloader, depending on how you look at it, right? But they become that way because either they tried something and failed and were ridiculed, or were ridiculed so they didn't even try. So it's a way of playing it safe. So to a certain degree, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, later. They have been in an environment where their psychological safety was hurt. It didn't exist. So they've learned to just kind of like play it safe and go with the flow and just ride along, But there's a certain fear there of actually standing on, sticking their neck out and taking a chance on something. But often if you work with them and you get them past that, they are great contributors, because while they're watching and free riding, they're feeling a little shame of like, I wish I could do that, but I'm afraid. So it's very subconscious. It's not like they're aware of it, saying, I don't want to do that because I'm afraid. It's kind of like they don't even know why they do it. It's the wound is so deep that not all of them, but most of them are like that, I've seen.
Yeah. Tullio, I have to validate that as well. I mean, the wound of most people that I found today, and again, this is something I didn't pay attention to years ago, but today I'm finding that people just need permission to take chances and bet on themselves a little bit, right? And say, hey, it's okay if you fail. We're behind you to support you. And failure is the only way to get to the other side. So, right? So, but the challenge is the wound. And we live in a society as well where sometimes when you're in the wrong team dynamic, where you do make the mistake or you do fail, and that team's not encouraging you, and they say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You should have came to us first. Well, now that person's thinking, oh my goodness, is any decision I make the wrong decision? Maybe I shouldn't make decisions at all. Then they become the free rider. So it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think this is gonna. Think about this background when we go to this next persona. So, the person who's not taking chances. So this next one is the naysayer. So not to be confused with the devil advocate, but this one is they're constantly negative, shoots down ideas without offering any constructive ideas of their own. They stifle creativity, innovation, and can diminish team morale. So when you're talking about that, Ash, I was thinking about, okay, yeah, maybe this person is kind of afraid to just put themselves out there because of that just insecurity, right? But so they're just going to sit back and take pot shots at everyone else, which can be extremely frustrating for the rest of the team, because this is when you can get that knee-jerk reaction happening at one point where someone just says, all right, smart guy, why don't you, and then the whole team dynamics break from there.
Most people, by the way, are great at QA though, and testing ideas. Like they'll find a flaw in something. So if you want to validate something or look for the things you missed, they'll find a flaw in it. So they do have some good quality from doing those things.
No, and you
have to put them into play correctly inside of the team dynamics.
Yeah, that's why I said not to be confused with the devil's advocate, because you need someone playing that role, right? Of okay, yeah, we think this is going to work. Why won't it? And you need someone to play that role. It just shouldn't be the same person over and over again who's not contributing anything else. I mean, you can appreciate their abilities there, but because you do need that devil's advocate in the process, just to, iron sharpens iron, that kind of thing. You need to poke holes at what you're doing. So, but yeah, you can't just be stuck in that if you're not contributing anything else. So let's get to this next one. The dominator tends to monopolize discussions and decision-making process, overpowering others' contributions. So this limits diversity of thought and team member engagement, which can lead to suboptimal decisions. So what do you guys think about this one?
I'm hiding.
And I'll let you go first.
I have definitely been that person, for sure. I think I went on a almost 15-year journey to not be that person. And some of that comes from the dynamics of how you were raised or the environment you were in, the way you think that's just normal. Like you're expected to be the person in charge who has all the answers, who dominates the conversation. And it's rooted in a lot of insecurities. So I can go back and realize that that was totally just trying to contribute, but in a way that was not positive. So as you learn to have more self worth, you learn to realize I don't have to make comment on everything, and you can just watch and observe. And sometimes there's a person who just has a desire to be so helpful that they just kind of interject into anything. So there's this balance you have to sort of play with. But I catch myself sometimes too, and I'm like, just sit back, because that is a lifelong transformation process. And usually it's something that happened when they were younger, could have been victimized in one way or another, bullied or what have you. There could be a lot of different circumstances that would cause someone to want to be the first to sort of strike, or the first to speak, or the first to be in control, because the fear of not being in control is greater. So it's a process. But if you identify, when I see people like that, I realize this person's hurting. They don't want to be victimized or taken advantage of. And so again, it goes back to what we'll talk about later, psychological safety, on how to pull them out of it. But yeah, I've definitely been that guy for sure.
You know what's funny, Tullio? So I, through just false reference experience and the wounds I had to deal with, the fact that I came from being bullied as well, I thought, and I was so glad that my direction got yanked the right way, but I thought at one point I had to become that dominated person, or I'm going to be dominated. And
you will die,
right? Yeah, and it was just a self-worth thing. And what I wanted to share also with the audience is that I think as my self-worth increased, I naturally got out of feeling I needed to dominate, right? It wasn't something I learned. It was more, it just naturally became where I was like, oh, I don't need to insert myself in this conversation when I know everything's working the way it needs to be. Versus when I didn't have the self-worth, I felt like if I didn't get involved in everything, then people would forget who I am, or that I wasn't even there, and so on and so forth. Now, something I'm working on today, and this is just something, I don't know if this is the problem until maybe you can speak to this, but now I'm in the phase where I join new organizations, new groups, and this is more for my passion project, my collective that I had to create because I dealt with this issue, is that now I'm in a phase where I become too helpful. And for whatever reason, I've found that in new environments that you enter, when you're the super helpful person who you just want to be involved and give as much value as you can, sometimes people can't handle it. And they start to take it the wrong way, like you're trying to be the dominating person, when in reality, you just want to be, hey, I'm here to help because I'm so excited for what you're doing. And I ran into that issue, which led me to have to create my own collective to create an environment of psychological safety. Because, I was, okay, well, this is not working. And I wasn't trying to dominate, but I think it was misinterpreted. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there as well. But now that I have an environment where everyone's super safe and being acknowledged and everyone's able to share ideas, I'm encouraging people to insert themselves and be helpful and acknowledging them for it. But then obviously careful that if someone is trying to be the dominant, maybe could that be a coaching moment so that no one gets rubbed off the wrong way. But it's all a self-worth thing. I think it all lands with self-worth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could go deep into that one. I think just
that could
in
be
general
to itself.
Yeah. I mean, you see it a lot in society today too, in different ways, and you can kind of psychoanalyze, okay, why is this person like that? But I think if you do have that, just the empathetic approach to each of these, right? There's always probably something going on there that's a little bit deeper than just someone being annoying because, of something or other. But it's sometimes it's, like you said, it could be some sort of wound that goes way back. But and we'll get into that psychological safety and stuff for that.
And I just want to add to that. Go ahead.
Go. No, do it.
Oh no, I was gonna add to that is, the self-worth part. Before I had the self-worth, when I was caught in situations like that, I would digress into becoming the free rider, because I was like, oh my goodness, I just rubbed everyone off the wrong way. these people think, they might not even be thinking this, but my paranoia. And then I'm just not going to do anything, or I'm just going to stay quiet and not contribute the way I can, or give the gifts that I was meant to give. Right. And that's what happens to people. They get discouraged, and then they just end up hanging out in the background, making wallflowers. I think the part where the self-worth came in for me was knowing the environment I was in, knowing I wasn't dominating, but trying to be helpful. And if the help is not wanted here, I'm going to take it to another environment where it is. And together, I was able to find people with the same mindset and move forward together and create that environment that encouraged all of us to want to help and acknowledge people that wanted to get together and do something good and grow together and so on and so forth. But I have to go back to my journey. If I didn't have that, I would have taken it offensively, or not offensive. I just would have broken down like I used to back in the day. Today, I'm like, no, I don't need permission, as long as I know the value systems are there, that I do have the good intentions. And if it's not going to happen in this environment, there's another one, even if they're created sometimes, go ahead and do it. And creating environments, I'm not saying you have to create your own collective or create a whole business to feel that you have self-worth. You could just shift friend groups. You could hang out with people that fit your mindset and say, okay, this was just a person that I wasn't their cup of tea, but I know I'm the cup of teas of other people. So I'm just going to not harp on this. I'm going to go ahead and just find my tribe. So I think that's, again, going back to the self-worth thing, I think we should think from that perspective. Then you're not too worried about what everyone else is thinking about you. Rather, you're trying to find the tribe. The tribe will always take you in. They're there.
It's the root to everything. I mean, you just described a combination of things, right? I mean, the megalomaniac, the dirty secret about them is they're very insecure, but they also have people-pleasing disease.
Yep.
So it's like everything has to go my way because I need validation. But if you don't validate me, I fire you, because it's fired by insecurity. But I need the validation. So it's like I use coercion to get the validation. And it's so deep. And the root of it is just really self-worth, lack of self-worth. Because if you don't think highly enough of yourself, you care about what people say and think. So you need that validation. You need to be pleasing everybody. And then you want to control your environment 100% because you're afraid of getting hurt or being invalidated. And it's actually sad when you really look at it. But,
So speaking of the self-worth, I think this next one really comes to play there. So this one is the micromanager. They don't trust team members to perform tasks independently. They insist on overseeing all details. This undermines team confidence and motivation and slows down the process. So we're just talking about self-worth. So if you want to have more problems in this particular area, just micromanage, and everyone's going to not feel confident about what they're doing because you're constantly over their shoulder. You're constantly nitpicking every little thing. Everything you give them, there's never going to be a right answer or a correct or have it correctly done. So this one I think is very disruptive. It's a killer. It slows everything down, and just like you said, it's going to feed into that self-worth issue.
Yeah.
You guys.
Steve, I've shared this with you, and I think Tullio, we've talked about it as well. I came from that environment, and I'll never forget that. Now I look back on it. I don't want to name names. These are people I probably listen to this podcast. But I can look back 3-4 years ago, and it didn't make sense to me. Today doesn't make sense. At the time, I thought that's how it was, where every little thing about the business had to be run, meaning that even the banner and display ads, he had to, the leader wanted to view every piece of creative. And we're talking about managing 50 different clients. And as you understand creative, a lot of it's just testing. We don't know what works until you put it out there. So you have to imagine the gridlock he was in his own business, that even if he didn't like a little detail, even if there's no data attached to his how he felt about the creative, it would get sent back and has to come back. No, I don't like that. This is that. Well, I found with every facet of his business, I think he ended up becoming the gridlock, and it ended up hurting team morale. Things didn't get done. But ultimately, me as the employee in that environment, I was second guessing every decision I made, that I cannot make a right decision unless my leader says it's right. And so go ahead. I killed that.
In our business, like, I feel like my job all the time is helping the confidence of our account managers and things like that, because they know what they're doing, but they're going to get pushback from different sources and stuff that you're talking about a different company, different situation, everything there, but it's kind of the same thing sometimes with dealing with clients and dealing with people who manage clients. Is there is this, they need to have confidence. They need to have confidence. And if you've got this micromanaging that's constantly second guessing them all the time, they're going to be so much less effective that way. So
you will never have 8 players on your team if you're a micromanager. It's just not going to happen. The readiness level of individuals, there's 4 readiness levels. One is the individual who needs to be told what to do and how to do it because they don't know how, right? So they're ready, they're open. It's like the soldier. They just need to be told what to do, how to do it. Then you have, the person who wants to get it done, thinks they can get it done, but they're not fully ready. They need to learn some more. That's like the overly excited sort of moron. I could do this. I could do this. So you don't want to stifle that excitement. You want to channel it and give them the training they need so they can be fully independent. And then readiness level 4 is the ultimate employee, the one who knows what to do and is willing to do it. And it's hands off. They just get it done. And I skipped over readiness level 3 because readiness level 3 is a result of micromanagement. It's the individual that was a 4, knows how to do it, but is no longer willing to do it because they've been they've been marginalized out of their excitement. And so whenever leaders look at their organization, they see people that have the skills but don't do it. It's not their fault. You should look more in the mirror. You should ask yourself, why they're no longer willing to do it. What have I contributed to that? What kind of style of leadership or environment have I created that's making a top-notch player not want to participate anymore? Usually it's a result of micromanagement. It is so toxic. It's a parental child sort of relationship that's established with basically your peers, who are equivalent. They're both adults, right? So it's interesting how that exists still in many companies, many fiat hierarchical type companies. And then they wonder why the engagement is so low, because you're not treating people as adults with dignity. In fact, you're wanting them to be like kids. And even with kids, you wouldn't talk to them that way, but yet it's okay to employ. So it's a reflection of poor leadership.
Hey, Tullio, that hit home so hard for me just now because I feel like my previous environment took me from a level 1, level 2, but eventually kept me at level 3. And then when I came and joined the 0 environment, I went from becoming a level 3 to a level 4. And Steve, I don't know if you recall, but when I first came in, one of the first few clients I was given, I acted like a level 4 and just started running it and getting things done because I felt I had the permission to do so. Right. But
we're a level 4 type company. That's how we operate. But we give people level 1 and 2 to get to level 4. We don't want level 3. That would be a reflection on the leadership.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
So this next persona, we talk about bottlenecking, and like if you're a micromanager, you can be the bottleneck on everything, right? You're going to be the bottleneck there. But there's another way you can bottleneck, and it's also being this persona, which is the ghost. They're often unavailable or unresponsive. They miss meetings and deadlines, disrupt project timelines, and they're forcing teams constantly to adjust plans. So as someone who's in leadership, I really fear about, I've got about 20 different things going on. So I'm like, okay, do I need to be in this meeting? I hope I don't, because I've got this other thing. So there could be a lot going on with the ghost for sure. So I hope I'm not that bottleneck. So I worry about that just to make sure, each meeting goes on. But I know there's a lot of reasons though for the ghost to exist. So in one case, it could just be you got too much going on. Another case, it could be you're just totally disengaged, right? That happens. You're just checking out completely. So you can be swamped. You're checking out completely, or you just don't have buy-in on this whole project. You're just nope. Yeah. So I think there's those kind of 3 elements that come to play here. What are your thoughts on the ghost?
Well, I mean, we talked about this, a little bit on the bottleneck thing. I think some of it also deals with learning to delegate if you have too much going on, and but also knowing how to prioritize and your time and the things you want to focus on, and then finding joy in the things that excites you. Right? If you find yourself doing the things that you feel you have to do, but they don't excite you, and it's more of that and less of the things that excite you, it's going to be only natural to just want to whatever. So you've got to go back to finding what you're passionate about and have those difficult conversations, whether you're having those conversations with your manager or with your colleagues or your peers about, I need to have things that really fuel me more. And I'm doing all these things that are not. So, maybe find someone else who likes doing that stuff that doesn't fuel you, but fuels them, and be in relationship about delegating some of the things or bartering if you have to. But it is totally a managed situation, right? You have to be aware of it and then recognize it and then do something about it. No one else is going to change that for you. It does affect everybody else. Unfortunately, it's kind of one of those things where the individual needs to say, I need to make a change and be raw about how to make that change, be vulnerable about it.
100%. And Tullio, I think as a leader, once you pinpointed who your ghost is, I think you said something really powerful. You have to have that raw conversation, because that person could just tell you, hey, I am overwhelmed, right? And I think when people avoid, or when organizations avoid those conversations, you start to think thoughts that aren't true as a leader to your employee. You might think your employee is just disengaged, or he doesn't care, when in reality, he's probably doing tasks that are outside their function. Maybe they're bogged down. And when you're able to determine those things, then you can put them in a better position where they're no longer a ghost, but focusing on their strengths, they're getting more done, and now they're available, right? Now you're able to see them as a part of the team. But then it's that really awful situation. I don't know, Steve, if you could speak to this, or Tullio, maybe you have an example where you pinpoint the ghost and it is someone who's just absolutely disengaged. I think really the question is can you get them back to being passionate? If not, would you want to give them the opportunity to just go find another culture fit, or maybe have them start from, how would you approach that? What are your, and I haven't had that experience yet, but I wouldn't know how to approach it, right? I would think, do I take this person off the team so they don't poison the rest of the group? What's the best approach?
Yeah. Well, so you have to address it, because if they're a part of the team, you're going to have resentment issues that it's not being addressed. So it's like, hey, this person's not pulling their weight. You got to dive into why, because if everyone else is feeling it or making up, the work that's not getting done, and you don't address it, you've got resentment. Now it's spreading, right? Now it's spreading to other parts of the team, and you've got problems. So you have to definitely sit down with that person and be pretty frank about, hey, what's going on here? I can say we've had that situation in the past where we had to let someone go. But I was like, I don't think you're passionate about this work. I've seen you light up when you talk about this other thing or this other thing. And I know you'd be really good at pursuing that. So it was like, and we've had people who I definitely encourage to pursue some of those other passions, because you don't want to be stuck doing something you don't like for the next 10 years, and you're just going to be doing it half-ass for the next 10 years. And that's going to seep into your life in so many different ways. And so I would hope that there's more people that can do someone a favor sometime like that, and just really get them to shift, do some self-evaluation, and, maybe go one step backwards, two step backwards, but with the hope of many steps forward.
Yeah.
But this really talks to the topic today, right? Team dynamics, working as a team. And that's the beautiful thing. If you create the kind of intimacy amongst the team where you can have these open conversations, it doesn't become, one, something you become resentful over, and two, something you get overwhelmed. Overwhelm is just a sign that you're doing more of the things you don't prefer versus the things that fuel you. Because I've been super productive doing the things that fuel me, and I never get tired. But the minute I start doing things that I have to, and sometimes you go through a stage where you have to do that. You might be moving, or you're going through something. Nobody wants to do it, but you have to do it. And it can feel overwhelming. It's overwhelming because you're doing stuff you don't want to do, but you have to do it, right? So speak with your teammates and like, hey, I'm finding myself doing a lot of this stuff, and I'm more like, love doing this stuff. Anybody else on the team here likes doing more of this stuff? Oh, yeah, I love doing that stuff. Oh, can we swap a little bit of our workload so you do the things that you love and I do a little bit more of the things that I love? I'm not saying I want to give you all the things that I don't love, but maybe we can balance it out a little bit. And then as a team, you get stronger together because you're collaborating on making the team stronger, making the system stronger. It's not just about the individual. And then it also gives you a sense of belonging to something greater than yourself, and you're having an impact. And being in that relationship is the only way you can really achieve it. Unfortunately, this goes back to the comment made earlier at the very beginning of the show, where it's not about the team, but the individuals, as it is the environment, right? So if you don't have the kind of environment where that dynamic is encouraged, it's going to become very difficult. It becomes a grind, right? Because you're just kind of top down told what to do, and everybody's looking out for number one. But if you move into a friendly environment where you act as friends with each other, then you can be supportive and just have a conversation about what's going on. And most people like to support each other when they're in relationship with each other. So it's not a difficult thing to fix if there's an effort made to want to create more intimacy.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been told I'm good at, from senior members of the staff, was finding what other people are good at. So it's like, okay, we hired you for this, but you're actually really good at this, or you seem to be really passionate at this. Let's switch gears and have you do more of this thing. So I think there's this, like you said, Ash, at the beginning, when you talked about your example, is finding, another niche for someone where they can contribute at a better level, and bring more impact for the team. So I think there's this ability to be a little bit flexible with everyone. Obviously, if someone's applying for a certain job, you're hoping that they're somewhat into that that realm.
Yeah.
The person we let go, I felt like they were not in the realm at all. Whereas, like, I don't have a position for what you're really passionate about. And so I think, but that's not, I give people a lot of chances and can see where some of their strengths come out and try and be flexible with that. Cause like you said, it's just, you can crush it if you can find someone's passion in a little bit of a different area.
Sometimes it could take a while. It took me a few decades to figure that out.
Sure.
Because I was really good at sales and marketing and strategy. So I always levitated towards that. I always got pulled into that, but I really love getting into the weeds of things and fixing things on the operation side of it, right? Fixing the way things are structured, creating systems, scalable environments. I really enjoy that. So I eventually realized, you know what, I'm doing this, but the aspect of that job that I love is solving client problems, right? Beyond that, I really don't care to be in that space. I really just want to be in the weeds. And so most people are like, I don't want to be in the weeds. I just want to be up here, strategizing and that's great. But I like going in there and pulling out the weeds and fixing stuff. So it took me a long time to recognize that and acknowledge that. And so there's definitely a lot of self-awareness required to have that conversation with yourself first before you can have it with other people.
Yeah. And like you said, when you said long-term, I have, for some people on our staff, I have some long-term ideas of where I think they could shift gears and be really good at, but it's like, we aren't there yet, but it's like, it's in my, my plans of okay, when we get to this certain point, I want to see, because this person's really good at doing this type of thing and they really enjoy it. So they're on my radar for that. So let's go into this next one. The drama queen or king, or the crisis maker. They overreact to situations, create unnecessary drama, distracts the team from their goals, and can create an environment of tension. This can sap the team energy, right? It's like the emotional vampire, sort of an energy vampire, but if all the emotions, everyone's using to deal with this person, you just get exhausted. What do you guys thought on the drama king or queen?
So what's interesting about the drama queen or drama king, I found that the people that will react to things in a certain way, it's because that's all they've known is to become reactive. I think there's a high level of fear attached to those individuals as well. And a lot of times when things are going bad, I think people's perception of bad is wrong, right? Every bad thing that occurs, there's always something, from my understanding, at least philosophically, I always found there's always something positive attached to that. But I've had to go through various renditions. It took me years to get to that point. And there's a lot of individuals who, in their own journey, they haven't had that realistic conversation or that awareness brought to light that, hey, you don't need to react or look at this dramatically. Rather, let's try to get together and find solutions. And I think just goes back to the psychological safety. It's being in an environment where if things were not going the way they're supposed to go, that we are still having each other's back and supporting each other to find the solutions. And I think giving that environment and giving people the permission to feel safe, that everything's going to be okay, I think then essentially limits the reactivity. But we live in a really reactive world. And I'm very lucky. We are very lucky to have each other, but I'm very lucky to be in an environment where we're able to have these higher level conversations. And I sometimes forget that when I come out of my own, and I don't want to call this a bubble because I feel like we're very open minded, but it's our own bubble, right? That we created of open, higher conscious thinkers. But when I walk out of that environment, I realize, man, it's not the same. So again, my feedback when I see that in a day-to-day activity, when I see that in other environments, other organizations, potentially, even as simple as in the music industry or the world of the music life in LA, where most people don't have the college or educational backgrounds. I mean, they're not looking to be higher conscious. They're just artists and they're learning as they go. I see a lot of that, right? Again, taking away their fear, I found has been one of the solutions. And I'm sure you guys have more you could offer or share with the audience. But it's a big fear-based thing I find with them. And there's always those who will add more fear or pour gasoline on the fire that this person already created. So I'm saying this, I've seen it happen. I'm like, wait, it's not only one person that's reactive. It's like 3 or 4 and they're feeding each other's reactivity. And sometimes you have to just step in and say, hey guys, everything's going to be okay. And then in time, they realize it is going to be okay. But yeah, the environment we live in today's society is created a lot of reactive people. And there's a lot of factors in that. I'm sure you guys can speak to some of that, but that's kind of a world we live in. I think you just have to be able to take that fear away and create an environment that gives everyone that psychological safety big time, or else you're going to have, a building burned down with a lot of people freaking out, so.
There's also various degrees of this. There's the speculator, there's the drama person, and there's also the person who's paranoid, the conspiracy theorist. So in some cases, it's not just wounds. Some people actually might need medication. In some cases, unfortunately, mental illness has a way to manifest itself through a lot of it too. So being aware of that, it's important. And some people do need a little more help than just talking, right? So it is a real problem because we live in a society where that's happening a lot. Just this sort of like paranoia, conspiracy, and speculation, just being consumed with anxiety and worry, and some of it is mental illness, unfortunately.
Yeah, and not to get too deep in, that's the topic on its own. I just want to add, and we haven't talked about this a lot, but the cell phone. This has led to so much anxiety. Even if you're doom scrolling, you're going through your Instagram, you get out of that world, you put it down. And I personally, I know I doom scroll a lot, and I'm sure you guys have seen me do it. And now I'm becoming more and more aware that it causes a lot of anxiety for me. But now it gets deeper because there's all the conspiracy theories, all the poor information that's online. You keep consuming it, and eventually you put it down, and you're like this, right? I think it helps in terms of solving some of the mental health problems that we have. Just put your phone away. I know I'm working on it. I'm speaking to the choir. I'm speaking to myself when I say this, but a lot of my anxieties are cell phone induced. And my generation's they're victims of that. Right. And no one talks about it enough. I would love for us to go into a topic in the future about just put your phone down. So it's interesting.
The younger generations actually, they talk about it so much better than the older generations. Like seriously, it's like older generations will just not address issues, but younger generations very aware of anxiety and issues around that more so than we've ever seen. And maybe, it is kind of a cell phone generation too. So maybe there's a lot going on with that. Why they're so self-aware.
100%. I might be the minority here, and this is embarrassing, but I didn't know what anxiety really was until after the age of 24, 25. When I just used to think I feel good one day, feel really not good today. Didn't even have a word for it. And you're one of the first individuals to speak to that, where I'm like, okay, was it just me that didn't know, or was there a shift in the last few years where now more people are aware, whereas before, even growing up in high school, I mean, you would think at that point in time I would have learned what anxiety or depression was. A lot of these mental health issues that I was suffering from, until I became aware of what they were, I was able to solve them. But it was kind of crazy for me that I didn't even know really much about it. So I might be on that generation that like barely got to becoming more aware, whereas now Gen Z and everyone else, that's all everyone talks about. I have anxiety, I'm not going to go to school. I have this, I'm not going to do that, right? And there's levels to it, right? But I mean, we have to acknowledge the fact that the younger generation is super aware, whereas even my generation.
It's better. Most of us grew up in suffering in silence because of the stigma around it, as if we were flawed. It's like saying someone who has diabetes is flawed. It's a disease. It takes, just the same way a mental illness is a disease. You don't choose to have it, So, but the newer generation, it's a good thing that they're more openly talking about it, because most of us have just literally suffered in silence, just sucked it up, right? Until that moment where you snap. So the snap moment is not good. Some people, that costs them their lives. So it's a very serious issue. But having those people on the team, they can be like the suckhole of the team, just constantly drama. Usually those need a little more empathy, a little more love, and maybe a little bit more things to do because they're focusing a lot of their attention on speculation instead of just being in action. But it's not an easy thing to fix, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing for the team to manage because, like you said, there's a lot of deep-rooted issues here that go into the anxiety and stuff like that. So it's like you aren't equipped for handling some of that. But I think too, though, if you do have that culture of love and empathy that you're building into everything you're doing, it's hard to go sideways when you're not sure what to do. Just do what the loving thing is. So let's go on. We've got a couple more here. This next one is the egoist. They put personal achievements or recognition above team success. Can lead to conflict, resentment, and lack of cooperation and spirit within the team. So they take credit for success and point fingers at everyone else for failure. You aren't fooling anyone. We know how insecure you are. But,
AKA the politician.
But you are kind of failing your organization. You're failing yourself. And it's, you're not in that leadership role of service for sure. It's like where everyone else should be getting the recognition, and you just step back and let that happen and be happy with that, be secure enough to let that happen. Yeah, you want that validation too. We know. But don't always be the one taking it and steamrolling others. This is how you have some of these bigger corporate cultures go sideways, is because these people end up getting rising to the top along the way. And so you have this very egocentric, low conscious sort of leadership going on there. What do you guys thought on this one?
So it's interesting. I'm witnessing this firsthand with an event company in LA, where I'm watching them digress from within. And the leader who owns the event company, the way he communicates is exactly that. He's an egoist. This is my company. This is my achievement. It's what I've done. Now, and it's interesting that I even witnessed the subtleties of the ideas that this individual takes from others without acknowledging that he got these ideas from others, and he's just running it. And poor gentleman, he just doesn't know better, right? Again, we're talking about promoters and artist managers and so on and so forth. Not all of them have gone through a lot of that spiritual journey or have the business education or ethics to know how to be a real leader. They're just going off of what they already know in life. But I just have to pinpoint that as I witness it and I see the damage it's causing and how people have separated, and different event companies or different collectives are being developed because of it. People just go in their own direction saying, I just don't want to be a part of this. It's very, I have empathy. I feel bad because I can't go ahead and tell this, but hey, this is why things are starting to struggle. Now it's going from, I'm so great, I've done this as my company, to now he's blaming everyone else for the reason why certain things aren't being as successful. So witnessing these wrong ways of managing people and watching the damage it can cause to a business or to anything you have in passion, your friend group, so on and so forth, it's real. And now we take vice versa, an environment that's being developed where we're supporting each other and putting each other first. And that is paying back in dividends. And people are learning that this is the right culture, right? This is because one, it makes me feel good, right? I'm in an environment now I feel really good being here. Everyone makes me feel really special. But then they're realizing that that's what it's all about, that we're all here really to collectively help each other out and support each other, work together, and so on. And to take it a step further, I think it's a culture change that has to occur organizationally for, across different organizations. The culture change needs to be that, hey, you're fine. Don't worry. You're going to get your acknowledgement when you take care of everyone else and acknowledge them and watch them succeed and self-actualize. It all comes back. And I think people just haven't seen that happen yet for them until they test it out. I've tested it out and I'm seeing it work greatly. And I've seen the opposite and seeing how that's damaging people and it's damaging their own. They're becoming their own gridlock. They're becoming their own cog in the wheel. So I just wanted to pinpoint, like, when you see these things firsthand, it's really interesting, and then when you see the other side of it and you see how it all works together, then you start to pick up that, hey, this is how it's all meant to be. But it's definitely an experiment. It's definitely a faith-based thing you have to have. You have to have faith that this is the right way and that you will get your acknowledgement if you have faith that you're in the right process, the right journey.
I think that was well said. I'm not going to add on any of that.
Thank you. I thought I ranted for a bit. I appreciate it.
It's lack of grace. It's lack of grace. Yeah. That's really what it is. Grace and gratitude. And the best thing that could happen to those individuals, dare I say, sometimes is a major correction, like a crash or some sort, where they just have a wake-up call. That would actually be a blessing in disguise for them.
Yeah.
So
I
speak from personal experience.
Yeah.
All right, we've got two more here, and then we'll go to part 2. So the next one is the communication blocker. So a poor communicator either under-communicates important information or communicates it in an unclear or confusing manner. This leads to misunderstandings and errors and requires additional effort to clarify or correct information. I think also on the opposite side of this, there might be like the I don't know, the over-communicated or the chatterbox, where it's like someone who goes off on tangents and derails the productivity, like I'm doing right now, where I'm just going on and on about something and you guys have gotten the point. And no, so I think there's the communication.
And then repeat it again,
Yes, and then you'll repeat it again. And so, there can be different ways to block communication. One could be like just not giving enough information. One can just be, so much that it's just like slowing things down a bit. I'm not going to go on, guys. I promise. Go for it.
It's a tough one. It's, because some people are naturally good communicators and some people have to learn it. It's a tough one too. And it's tied, I guess, to all the other things we talked about, there's a bit of a lack of grace in not realizing how important it is to convey your thoughts so that they're clear and understood by other people. There's almost a lack of respect for other people when you do that, but you don't recognize you're not doing it from that place, right? But that's how it shows up. And so how do you get someone to become a better communicator? That's a good question. It's not an easy one. Probably therapy.
There's a lot. I mean, there is a lot that goes into it. That goes into it. It can be like lack of confidence. It can be, worries about all kinds of different things. It's very difficult. And I think you probably just need like reps and feedback, I think. And done so in a safe, gentle manner, because you love the person. And so I think, otherwise, you'll just cause more trauma on the other end if you're not.
I mean, all these things we talked about, you can get a coach, you can get a mentor, you can get a therapist, and sometimes you need all three, but it's fixable. They're not a life sentence. You just have to have the desire and the willingness to do it. And sometimes there's a lack of awareness that the person has that problem. So be a good friend and tell your friend when they need to work on something. And that goes back to this idea of having a team where we act as friends. I think 3 things of friends. 1, we support each other in our wins, so we celebrate each other. When you win, I win. That's the kind of mindset. And also we support each other when we're not doing so well, right? So when you fail, I fail, and there's a lot of empathy in that. And we don't sell each other out. If you're going off the rails, I'm going to call you out on it, because a good friend would do that. I'm not going to sell you out, right? This idea that sometimes you're not going to speak up and say something to your friend because it might jeopardize your friendship. That's not a true friendship. A true friendship will not sell someone out if they're going off the road, off the rails, and say, hey man, listen, you got to get this on track. What's going on here, right? That's what a true friend does. And a true friend will respond to that in kind and take it in. So, at some point you have to be able to have those intimate conversation amongst the team. That's why it's important to have a good team dynamic where you have this openness and this ability to do that. I think we'll talk about that next. And that requires a very special kind of environment to do that, where you can openly have those conversations, where it's safe to have those conversations.
No, absolutely. And Tullio, to add what you just said to the desire, because when you're creating that feedback loop, you have to have the desire to want to change, so that when that friend does come and want to help you, you don't take what they're saying offensively and take away the gift that they're offering you, right? By saying, hey, I think you should work on this and you could achieve so much more. A lot of times you deal with the egoists at that point when you try to share that feedback and they push back against it. Well, at that point, that individual didn't have the desire to really change or grow. Thankfully, I was very fortunate, but I'll say that in college, I was definitely the and I had to keep repeating myself, and I could see everyone's rolling their eyes. So today, even when I think I've been able to work on it because I've had the right feedback loops, but even today, I'll even throw in there, hey, I think I'm still ranting. And I have to get the feedback to say, no, Ash, you're on the right track. Or Ash, you did kind of rant a little bit. you repeat that one statement multiple times. Can you just keep it concise? And that just has helped me just become a better communicator. And even with this podcast, it's, you guys are consistent, always giving me that great feedback, just the way we communicate with each other. So I found that my ability to communicate has become more effective. But I definitely was that guy, and I had the desire to change, and the universe put the right people to give me the right feedback. But you have to have the desire for this.
Any other 3 people would do this podcast in 20 minutes. We take an hour because we like it.
Yeah, right?
That's why we're going to have part 2 here coming up. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do the part 2. Guys.
This is absolutely a 2-parter. So let's do, and we're going to get to that in 1 second, but let's finish this off. One last negative sort of persona in team dynamics. This is the resistor, resistant to change, whether it involves new ideas, processes, or tools. This hinders the team ability to adapt and innovate, and potentially keeping the team behind current trends or best practices. You might call this the teaching old dog new tricks. I can see that it gets tough. I have to learn new tricks myself, and so it's like, you have to kind of embrace change, embrace uncertainty, embrace the fluidity of things sometimes, and realize that, it's probably, sometimes it's going to be slow at first, and you'll, take some lumps in that process of change, but there's a reason why things are changing. And that's really, I think, that last part is how you can stop the resistor from resisting so much, is to help engage them into the process of, hey, here's the problem. I want you to find a solution for this. And, maybe they're going to come down the same path, and they'll get the buy-in in that regard, is just by taking leadership on something. I know I've sneakily done that to a few people on staff sometimes. It's like, hey, I want you to be in charge of this. And really it's because it's like something that they can work on themselves. So, and they end up owning it and being the champion of that. And it goes so much smoother. So what do you guys thought on the resistor?
I agree 100%. I have a hard time relating because I've never been that person, but it's been one of those things where you just find yourself having to sell them a lot. And so it just puts a drain on the team when they're having to convince you or sell you on an idea. But that's not the way to go about it. right? So what I've learned is it's not about selling them as it is getting them to have buy-in on their own. So your idea of getting them to own the solution is a great way to get a resistor to get on board, because then they're part of the solution, not just needing to be sold as to why they should.
You know, it's interesting. The best example I have, and as we were telling the story, Steve, I was thinking back. I was like, hey, this is actually super relevant. And I'm going to go back to a very simple example. This is like the testing grounds for all this college. College was massive testing grounds. When you're in a fraternity, you're learning, you're seeing everything happen firsthand. And what I found within my fraternal organization, there was the innovators, who are all the new kids coming in, wanting to change how things are so they can be better, right? Because they know there's problems that they want to try to help fix. And then there's the older guys who are like, this is how it's always been. We're not changing a thing. That bumping of heads, I find I think that's society as a whole. There are people who you can't teach dog old tricks, and they don't want you to change anything. They want things to stay the same. They're trying to keep the tradition of the way things were going, and they feel like they're responsible to gatekeep that, right? And then you have the innovators, people who are like, wait, but this hasn't worked for you, and do you not have the awareness that it's not working for you? You could just simply look at the data or the fact that we were always broke as a chapter. You know, there's something not right going on. But now when I look back on it, I have some empathy. And this is what I'm thinking about. The innovators who finally are able to push through and change things. And there's some success that comes from it. And not everything is perfect. Eventually, they become the traditionalists, I found. And you have to try to convince those people who went so hard to try to convince the old people that this was their right way of doing things. Now they think they're right, but there's something missing still. Because you could always keep innovating. So I think I realized in the past now that I could have, if I stayed in my chapter long enough and didn't go into my apprentice journey of digital marketing, I would have been the traditionalist eventually, right? Because it was such an uphill battle. And once you finally get what you want, you're on top of the mountain, you're trying to protect it. And I could understand that now at the deepest level. Whereas before I was like, those guys they always wanted to push back. This is just a societal problem. You're just that. No, I think there was something they had to break through themselves to get the chapter, or in this case, whatever that their goal or agenda was, through. And now that they're there, they're not aware that they were that we're all the same. That if there's something new being brought into the game, it's because that's you just got through one phase, and it's always ever evolving. There's always something new innovation. So you can't push that back. Even if you think you got it right, even if you figured it all out, there's no one person that solved the universe. And I think as long as you constantly have that open mind that you're going to have to break through certain things, but then be prepared to be broken through yourself. Right. And I think that's a very powerful thing to just be aware of and accept.
Yeah. Just learning to be adaptable is the key. And no matter what age you are, what age group, that's probably the best skill you can have as a human being. And realizing that sometimes you're seeing through things through a lens that's been around for so long, but it's just a lens that we created a reality around this fake lens. In the radicalpurpose.org, we call that the fiat lens, where you see things a certain way. And we've bought into it for so long that we think it's reality. But in actuality, it's just a lens. But when you flip the lens and you see the reality for what it is, you learn that, everything is adaptable. Nature's constantly moving, constantly giving. It's all adaptable. And that's how we're made. So this idea of permanence and all that it was just something we bought into collectively. And so because it collectively, and the collective intelligence is so powerful, we can decide a certain path. Doesn't mean it's the right path. And then over many generations, it's like, what the heck are we doing? And many generations later, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. And then there's a new collective intelligence that says, we're going to go in this other path. And I think now they're more adaptable, the newer generation, which is a good thing. And, so we just have to learn to be more adaptable if we're not that type.
Yeah, I think this is just the process of evolution. It's, it's not pretty, but it's beautiful sometimes. And it's just that friction that of different things coming up against each other. This is how new stuff gets built. There's a reason why something's not working well and something comes along that's trying to solve a problem. And this is going to cause a lot of friction. And with businesses, you really see that in those growth stages of where, hey, you've got to scale, you've got to do stuff, you've got to change ways. And, Other people might be set in their ways on how things have been going. And it's just a painful process sometimes to push through that, or you're going to be stuck. So you got to, adapt, improvise, overcome, which we're going to do right now. And we're going to save this to a 2-part episode. So we've covered the negative personas. In the next episode, we're going to cover the positive personas in team dynamics. And then we're going to provide you with a playbook for peak team performance. And we'll do that on the next Bliss Business podcast.